Hey everyone, welcome to the channel. This is FiveXFive and I'm Simo. If you haven't already, grab your fave bevy, a seat, and let's get into it. Alright, we're back to talk about Ahsoka some more. This is going to be my mid-season sort of thoughts about the show. Now that we're into the 4th episode, figured it was a good time to kind of catch up with the show. So if you haven't caught up, turn away now. So my first impression of the show was really, really good. I really loved the first premiere 2 episodes. And that hasn't really changed. I opened with a 5 out of 5 rating, but I kind of adjusted down to somewhere around 4 now that I've seen a couple more episodes and a couple nitpicks have kind of creeped in. The show is still really, really good. A 4 out of 5 stars is amazing, but there are a couple issues that kind of like weigh on me with the show. So fantastic show, but not perfect. That's not an awful place to be in. The story is interesting with enough mysterious elements to keep me strung along. I can't predict what's going to happen next at any given time, and that's always a good thing for me. So I like to be caught off guard, and I like to be wrong about shows. I have to take a moment to talk about the casting of this show. It is absolutely perfect. And we enjoyed the announcement a couple years ago when it was made, and it was spot on. I mean, she looks fantastic as Ahsoka. The prosthetics are great. The makeup is great. She looks like Ahsoka brought to life. But we also need to talk about everyone else. I mean, Natasha is like Sabine ripped right out of a cartoon cell. She looks and feels and acts like Sabine. But I can't imagine you being a Rebels fan and watching this show and not thinking, oh my God, it's like the cartoon is just brought to life. Because that's what it feels like. There are moments where I kind of disassociate watching and I'm like, they've brought the cartoon to life. They've really done it. And I think that's really amazing. I can't imagine any other media where I felt that way, but I do here. So let's come around to the performances, right? Now that we've had a few episodes, it's a little bit easier to get a feel for how everybody is and where the performances are and how the characters are being portrayed and everything. And I have to admit, Ahsoka is a little lacking to me. I love Rosario Dawson, but her iteration of Ahsoka is it's just a little bit flat to me. I know I've seen other reviews and heard of other reviews that really like push this idea that she's being very stoic. And while I suppose that is true, for me, it's more like a lack of warmth and a lack of compassion. It's kind of tricky because I've seen pseudo-misogynistic comments saying that she needs to smile more and everything. It's like, no, that's not it. But the character of Ahsoka is a very warm, compassionate character, despite being a Jedi. And even though I know this is supposed to be a more mature iteration of the character, she's still missing that warmth and compassion that's underlying and comes across in Ashley Eckstein's animated performances. This is really a quality that is missing in Rosario Dawson's performances. So even though she occasionally does the smirks and half smiles and grins and whatever, the subtle mannerisms that I feel are present in the animation, they are here in live action as well. But the camera doesn't linger on them in the same way, and that's a direction choice. Maybe that's part of it, but it doesn't come across in the warmth of her voice either. She's all business in the show, and I think that even a mature Ahsoka would be just a little bit warmer and a little bit more compassionate. And it's interesting because I feel like this is also an older version of Ahsoka in a very similar way to us getting an older version of Yoda, an older version of Obi-Wan, and an older version of Luke, who have all kind of been through life a little bit longer, and they're all a little bit more jaded, a little bit more cynical, and I feel like we're seeing a little bit of that here with Ahsoka as well. Maybe she is closed off because her more recent adventures that we weren't present for, because the show really makes it clear that she's been active and had this whole other life before the camera started rolling on this show. So there's gaps of her adventures we don't know about yet. In that period of time, shit's gone down, and this is a more weathered, a more cynical, a more closed off version of the character. I like that in this sense because I really like that mirrors how pretty much every other master has been portrayed in media, whether it was Obi-Wan or Luke. Everybody seems to get jaded when they get older. I like that, but I still feel like her warmth and compassion would show through more, and I still feel like she's made it clear that she's very much there to help people, so her motivation doesn't seem to match up with how closed off she is, right? Like if she's there to help people and she's not totally broken, okay, cool, that's totally fair, but why isn't she displaying more of her warmth and compassion then? I feel like those two things would be kind of correlated. Anyway, so maybe I'm just nitpicking, but this is something with the performance of the character that is kind of weighing on me. And it bothers me because I feel like it's a little bit of the charm of the character that's being lost. And it is the title character of the show, so I really want her to be likable to the audience and to me, and for the show to succeed. And I feel like without a little bit of that warmth and compassion being present, the character loses a little bit of its charm. The story around Sabine is perfect. I mean, we're getting so much, even though she is so not forthcoming and so Mandalorian, they're saying so much about the character and her motivations and what she's been through without even telling us what she's been through during that period of time before the cameras started rolling on the show, right? So it's kind of interesting to see how this is going. And of course, they're alluding to a lot of off-screen backstory between Ahsoka and Sabine that we've entirely missed. The show lays the premise that Sabine is Ahsoka's Padawan, a very untalented Padawan, but it doesn't take any time explaining why they're estranged. It just shows us that they are estranged. On one hand, I feel like some audiences probably initially reacted to that by being like, well, we need something more to go on. We're not invested in these characters. We don't know them. We need something more to go on. I think that's fair to an extent, but I have to say that, at least from my perspective, I really like the fact that the show is taking the time and using a sort of slower pace to lay a slow groundwork for why they're estranged, rather than just do it all in an exposition dump or something at the beginning of the series in the first episode or two, which would have made a lot of early critics of the series very happy. I think that resisting that urge has really paid off for the show. It's created a curiosity that keeps the audience engaged. You want to know more about what is making these characters tick and what's the nature of their beef, right? So I do think it's paid off. Now, just speculating a bit, I think from the lines that have been dropped, it seems from my perspective like Ahsoka's motivations have become very clear. We got a couple lines in the show that clearly indicate Sabine is the last of her family, so the rest of her family would have theoretically been wiped out in the Purge, and she's alone. So her rebels cell is probably the last thing she considers family, and specifically she said in the episode a few times that Ezra Bridger is her last remaining family member, who she considers her remaining family member. So that actually makes perfect sense. She's got a really traumatized past, but this estrangement between her and Ahsoka seems to be really predicated on the fact that Sabine was untalented with the Force. Sabine's lack of talent in the Force is what made Ahsoka hesitate and even decide not to train her. And when I say that, I don't mean it's because she's not good enough. I mean, that might be true to some extent, but it's not her lack of ability, it's the endangerment that her lack of proficiency puts her in. If she's running around the galaxy as a Jedi and she's not very talented, it endangers Sabine. And it seems like they're trying to tell us that that's the real reason why Ahsoka wouldn't train Sabine. And I think also there's probably a part of it is Sabine's trauma. There's this risk that Ahsoka can't count on Sabine. I mean, the episode really foreshadows that, where she says, "Can I count on you? I need to know if I can count on you." And Sabine is like, "Yeah, you can," but she totally can't. In the end, Sabine gives up the map. I would see that as an example of what Ahsoka is concerned could happen. She could make the wrong choice and not make the choice for the greater good. And so Ahsoka doesn't feel she can count on her when she needs to make the hard choices that a Jedi has to make sometimes. And that's part of it. That's what leads to the fall of a Jedi, right? Episode 4 is called Fallen Jedi. That's presumably the hard choices that Baylan Skoll and Shin Hati couldn't make. That's why they're fallen Jedi. They were consumed with their attachments and couldn't just make the hard choices despite their attachments. And I think Ahsoka is worried that Sabine is at risk of that. But I also think a very big part of it is she is worried that Sabine can't take care of herself as a Jedi. In the context of a Jedi, she's going to be in a whole other layer of danger. And I think this is actually really a major part of the issue, because this is something that feeds into Ahsoka's own backstory. Of course, during the Clone Wars, Anakin trained Ahsoka, and he trained her very hard. He drove her. And the reason why was he was very much attached to her and didn't want to see her die.
I knew they were still alive. I told you we shouldn't give up on them. It's not that I gave up, Skywalker, but unlike you, when the time comes, I am prepared to let my student go. Can you say the same?
So he drove her to a higher standard so that he could ensure her safety better. And in the process, of course, safeguard his own feelings. If she's more proficient, she's more likely to be able to handle anything the galaxy throws at her. He's much less likely to lose her.
Come on, let's go again. You ready? Begin.
Not bad. It took us 5 minutes to knock you out that time.
I can do better.
Begin.
And I think Ahsoka is struggling with that same thing. But in the end, Ahsoka was inadvertently tested by Trandoshans and separated from Anakin. And she was forced to survive and thrive on her own with only Anakin's teachings. And Anakin had to let go of her. He had to do what he could to try and find her and be reunited with her from his side. But in the end, he had to let go of her and just hope that everything he taught her was going to be enough for her to survive and to come back to him. And it worked out. But part of that is because Ahsoka was so gifted and so proficient as a Padawan and in the Force. So it was a bit of a safety net that Anakin could count on.
Is she a worthy apprentice?
No one has her kind of determination.
Except you.
I'll find her.
This may not be within your power.
Whatever you're trying to say, Master Plo, just say it.
I am suggesting that perhaps, if you have trained her well, she shall take care of herself and find a way back to you.
Ahsoka doesn't have that sense of security with Sabine because Sabine doesn't have that proficiency with the Force. So I think that's probably where the struggle came from. In addition to the risk of being tempted to fall and give in to your worst nature. So far, I think the show has really brought up a lot of really interesting character elements, and I can't wait to see how it all plays out. Obviously, we left on a cliffhanger. Going into episode 5, I'm thinking I really loved that they finally canonized the Night Sisters in live action. I didn't think that was ever going to happen, but I love that they're doing it. I absolutely love the idea of the Night Sisters, and I really hope that they give us a little bit more to go on and show us a little bit more about the Night Sisters' connection to the Force and how that works. I hope they explore it rather than just make it like a passing comment. Oh, by the way, they're Night Sisters. They also use the Force. I just want a little bit more. And I know going into episode 4, there were so many theories about who Marok was. I am so glad that they just made him a reanimated corpse of the Night Sisters. If you didn't catch it, when he got stabbed, he turned into green smoke, which is a sign that he's a reanimated corpse of the Night Sisters. The internet was like, oh, it's Starkiller. Oh, it's Ezra. Oh, it's Barriss. I mean, they're all fun theories. But I'm really glad that in the end they decided to just make this character somebody else. I think one of the other theories I saw is that it's the reanimated third brother. I think I saw that on one of the other content creators. I mean, I guess it's possible, but if you look at his feet, the third brother had, I don't know, opposable feet. I think that's what they're called when they're elongated and opposable, whereas our Marok had humanoid feet. Unless it's just like a, hey, that's animation, this is live action distinction, then nope. But anyway, I'm glad from the looks of it that he's just a reanimated corpse. And I mean, there's still time for them to clear up who he was and answer those questions. But if they don't, like, it's totally good. I'm happy with that, him not being anybody of consequence. And there's no twists to that. I think it would have overshadowed the actual story of everybody else. So I think that was a good choice on their part. So right now, of course, the big thing everybody is thinking about going into episode 5 and the end of the show is Ahsoka is waking up in the world between worlds. And of course, she's faced with her former master, Anakin, who appears just as she last remembers him. The last time she saw him, he was wearing the exact same costume. This is very intentional, but The question is, what are they trying to actually imply? I mean, the story can go either way at this point, so everyone is just guessing. We've never had any in-universe explanation of what the world between worlds is, or anything of substance anyway. We can only really speculate what it is. Right now, Anakin appears to be a live-action person, and his line to Ahsoka was that he didn't expect to see her so soon, which kind of implies that he's dead and that he's been waiting for her. I mean, looking at how he appears, he doesn't appear to be a Force ghost, but that could just be a function of where they are. And he talks like he's a Force ghost, though. So either he's a Force ghost, and this is kind of just the natural habitat of Force ghosts, the world between worlds, or he's real life, and he's found his way into the world between worlds before he died, in an earlier part of his history, and she's talking to a part of him from the past that, similar to the way she was rescued in the world between worlds by Ezra Bridger during Rebels, he might have been pulled out of his timeline, his continuity, to enter this world between worlds. And then, of course, he rescues her from the cliff in this moment as well. There's kind of no way to know for sure how this is going to go. I'm kind of leaning towards the world between worlds being a personification of the Force. And it's like a visual representation of being in the physical Force. And everybody in there looks like they're alive, whether they're dead or not. And I'm kind of leaning towards him being dead and a Force ghost. This is just him using the world between worlds as a nexus to visit her and to appear to her. That's what I'm thinking. But I mean, this could go any way at this point, so who knows? And the last thing that I noticed is that the end credits look distinctly like the markings on Mortis in the Clone Wars Mortis arc. I can't shake that. It is too similar. I don't know what that means, but I'm feeling like it's important. And if it does mean anything, I'm feeling like it's all connected. And so Mortis, the world between worlds, all of it, it's all just an extension of a physical personification of the Force. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. I could be totally wrong. I've been wrong before. I'll be wrong again. But we'll see. That's a wrap for now. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. I'll see you all in the next video. Stay safe and look out for each other.